I'm John Beaudin from the Aircom Radio Network, and our special guest today is the son of rock and roll royalty, the son of Yes guitarist Steve Howe, Dylan Howe, who's an amazing drummer. And he's got a brand new project called Subterranean. It's sort of a tip of the hat to David Bowie and Brian Eno during their Berlin period. And Dylan Howe joins us from his home in England via Skype. Dylan, first of all, on Subterranean, you put drums where usually a drummer wouldn't put percussion. Was that a challenge for you? How did that go for you?
It's got quite a kind of scope and a kind of cinematic atmosphere, but at the same time, it feels quite intimate as well. I suppose that was something that I was kind of hoping to get. I think sometimes the drums recorded quite kind of dry and up close. I wanted it to feel like you were in the room, or so you can kind of connect to it. But at the same time, it's got a kind of scope and a scale. So it's a good thing it's got those two things at the same time. Yeah.
We're talking to Dylan Howe via Skype about his brand new album, Subterranean, new designs on Berlin from Bowie. And I got to ask you a typical drumming question. I know you've been drumming over 30 years now, but a few drummers wanted me to ask you this. Do you actually have a place where you play drums, or are you driving your neighbors crazy?
I've just recently got a studio. It's in a container on a farm. So it's like finally, after kind of, I mean, I've been playing for 35 years, and it's only in the past 5 years I've actually been able to get a kind of a specific studio space. You know, in the past it was, you know, having to go to other like rehearsal studios or in my house, like driving the neighbors insane. So to finally just have a space I can go to any time, it's great. And yeah, I mean, I'm kind of, I would say I'm practicing more than I ever have. There's a lot to do. You know, there's a lot to catch up.
We're talking to Dylan Howe on his brand new album, Subterranean, new designs on David Bowie's Berlin period. A few years ago, Dylan, I talked to Steve Gadd about his Gaddabouts album and how I literally felt there was a space between the notes. Because Art Decade, that tune, for instance, gave me that breath of feel. Just there was something very spacey and peaceful about it. Tell me about that one.
Well, it was something actually that the original version had a whole other section that we were going to double time and then kind of spin out onto this whole kind of like a kind of hard bop soloing form. And then in the studio, we just thought, why don't we not do that and just stay in this kind of very languid ballad essentially, but and just stay in a very simple short form that kind of cycles quite quickly, and just kind of let it happen as it is really, and not really try to do that much with it, and to have these kind of these open-ended intros and outros that have these sort of other tunes that are kind of overlaying over the top just before like the main melody starts. So it's just another one where it was the simpler the better, and the more space, and just, as you say, like to let it breathe and just kind of let it play itself. And there's a lot of like really, really nice harmonic stuff going on in there, and I mean everyone plays great on it. So I liked it because it's quite short too, because a lot of the tracks kind of spiral into this slightly epic thing, but just have a couple of things which is just a kind of succinct, you know. It's so it's as a contrast, and you know, probably it's the most kind of melodic in a way, even though you've got this slightly kind of angular siren sort of intro and outro thing over the top.
Dylan, my son Chase is a very serious drummer. He's only 11, but he drums, it seems like, round the clock. And he's a big Yes fan. And he wanted me to ask you, being Steve Howe's son, that when you were young, where Bill Bruford might have been hanging around, or Alan White later on, Like, did they ever come up to you and say, "Here, Dylan, here's what a paradiddle sounds like"?
Yeah, well, they did it a little bit. I mean, seeing Alan and Bill play at a very young age, you know, probably 5 or something, you know, definitely kind of, I did gravitate to the drums because it was strange. I was talking to Bill last month, and he kind of says, why did you choose the drums? And it started to dawn on me, but that actually is because the action on the drums is the most exaggerated, so you're able to actually see what they're doing, because everyone else is like, it's very small, micro kind of movement. So for a young mind, it was easy to sort of understand, if you do this, that happens, and then I can see it and I can hear it. So that was how that, I suppose. And then I think, I kind of sat down at Alan's kit a few times when I was about like 8 or 9 or something. And then once I've been playing for a while, I went over to speak to Bill a few times at his house. You know, I was kind of like, you know, I was confused about how to do stuff, or, you know, like, how do you get good, or, you know, how do you get gigs and stuff. So we kind of talked, not a lot of playing, but we talked a lot about the business, and as you know, if you read his book, he's got very interesting perspective on the music business. You know, so that was, you know, it's really good. You know, it's great. So yeah, I mean, to be around those kind of guys and music, it's gonna leave an impression. Yeah.
Our special guest is Dylan Howe, talking about his brand new album, Subterranean. Dylan, I know as a teen you saw Buddy Rich. Did that really change your life as a drummer?
Yeah, I've been playing for about 3 or 4 years then. And then somehow my parents sneaked me in to see him at Ronnie Scott's. And I think I just hadn't seen anything that was comparable, and in a way there isn't anything that is comparable to seeing Buddy Rich. So this was like a kind of early 80s. It was easily like a life-changing gig, you know, because and especially to hear, it was probably the first time I'd seen kind of like a big band, and to see how a drummer can lead a band. I mean, his approach obviously is a lot of shouting sometimes, a lot of grunting and kind of, you know, yeah. So that was really inspiring, and obviously just sort of like, it was like when you see something that is almost like magic. It's like, I don't know how you do that. Is that real? Can anyone else do that? I mean, it's just it. You know, it was just off the scale. You know.
Dylan, I always like the top 500, 150 drummers of all time in drumming magazines and all those polls. It's an interesting thing. You'll always get Neil Peart battling it out with Buddy Rich, or John Bonham fans will be fighting with Keith Moon fans on who's more or less technical. But who were the guys for you that really made a difference?
Yeah, I suppose there's always the same people that have stuck in my mind over the years. So kind of starting out, definitely, you know, Bruford and Alan White, and Stuart Copeland, Stevie Wonder, Al Jackson Jr., and then Andy Newmark. So it was like the kind of like the backbeat guys and like the studio guys. And I was into the Who and into Zeppelin, but I didn't go crazy about them till later. I think because Zepp was signed to Atlantic and so yes, and there was a rivalry, so like nobody ever played them in the house. It was really funny. It was like, Zeppelin, yeah, it's just rock, you know, yeah, kind of thing. But then getting into jazz and then into funk and stuff. So then it was all the James Brown drummers and like the Motown. So I was still like heavily into backbeat kind of guys, and then also into Dennis Davis, you know, who's on all the Bowie stuff, Tony Thompson. But then getting into jazz and understanding what it actually is. So I had to go into the fusion area to get into the real jazz. So after I got over like the Vinnie Colaiuta kind of splash cymbals and China stuff of the kind of early 90s, then I started to realize actually that, you know, who everybody should know about is, you know, Roy Haynes, Papa Joe Jones, Haley Joe Jones, Elvin Jones, and Tony Williams. And now it's kind of like Mel Lewis, and so I've done everything in reverse. But I've kind of so you're always trying to go all of the music and of the drumming. So it's like if everybody was to hear those guys I just talked about, those older guys, and then apply that into everyday session drumming or into like the backbeat stuff, everything would sound a lot better because they're the men. I mean, you know.